Formula One is entering a reset era. New power units, new political balances, and new power brokers behind the scenes. Teams aren't just rebuilding cars for 2026, they're rebuilding identities. And in the middle of this fragile transition, a shockwave is forming that could redraw the entire midfield hierarchy. Christian Horner, the architect of Red Bull's modern dynasty, has been absent since his dramatic exit from the sport last year. But absence does not mean silence. Behind closed doors, negotiations are taking place. Negotiations so unusual, so ambitious, that they hint at something far bigger than a simple return to the pit wall. And if these talks succeed, Alpine may become the epicenter of F1's next political earthquake. If you want to understand why this story could reshape Formula One's future, make sure you subscribe, because this is one development that Paddock doesn't want you to see coming too late. Let's be absolutely clear from the start. This is not a rumour about Christian Horner quietly slipping back into Formula One through the side door. This is something far more calculated, far more political, and far more dangerous for the existing balance of power in the paddock. Christian Horner is not negotiating for a job. He is negotiating for ownership. According to multiple reports, Horner is in talks to acquire a minority stake in Alpine by purchasing shares currently held by Otro Capital, the private investment firm that controls 24% of the Enstone-based team. This single detail changes the entire narrative. Horner does not want to return as a team principal who can be fired, sidelined, or politically weakened. He wants structural power, financial leverage that guarantees relevance, authority, and long-term security. And that tells us something crucial about how Horner views his Red Bull exit. From Horner's perspective, his departure from Red Bull was not a professional failure. It was a political rupture. A power struggle he believes he did not lose on performance, but on internal dynamics. Buying into Alpine would allow him to return to Formula One on his own terms, free from corporate volatility, and immune to the kind of internal politics that ultimately ended his 20-year reign at Milton Keynes. So why Alpine? Because Alpine is the perfect combination of potential and dysfunction. On paper, Alpine should be a front-running force. It is a works team backed by Renault, with deep technical infrastructure and a historic factory in Enstone. Yet year after year, the team finds itself trapped in the midfield, sometimes drifting dangerously close to the back. Management reshuffles, unclear long-term vision, and internal fragmentation have turned Alpine into a team with resources but no unified identity. This is exactly the type of organisation Horner knows how to exploit and rebuild. At Red Bull, Horner's greatest achievement was not just winning championships. It was building a system, a culture where technical brilliance, aggressive strategy, and political clarity all worked in alignment. Alpine, by contrast, has spent years paralysed by bureaucracy and indecision. Bringing Horner into the ownership structure would instantly change how Alpine is perceived inside and outside the paddock. Sponsors would see stability. Engineers would see leadership. Drivers would see ambition. And that's before Horner even makes a single operational decision. Now, let's talk about Flavio Briatore, because his involvement is impossible to ignore. Briatore's public comments are deliberately cautious, almost dismissive. But read between the lines, and the message is obvious. Talks are happening. Multiple investor groups are circling, and Horner is just one of them, but a uniquely powerful one. Briatore confirms that Horner is negotiating directly with Otro Capital, not Renault. That's important. Because if Horner secures that 24% stake, Renault no longer controls the narrative alone. Any major strategic decision would suddenly require compromise. That is how power shifts begin in Formula One. From a technical perspective, the timing could not be more significant. Alpine is preparing for a massive transition heading into 2026, including the abandonment of its own power unit program in favour of becoming a customer team, widely expected to be Mercedes. This is a delicate, high-risk transformation that has destroyed teams in the past. But Horner has already lived through this exact scenario. He managed Red Bull through the painful separation from Renault, navigated political hostility, secured Honda's commitment, and eventually turned an engine partnership into a championship-winning weapon. That experience alone could be worth tens of millions to Alpine. More importantly, it could prevent the kind of identity collapse that often follows factory teams when they give up engine independence. Then, there's the human factor. Formula One talent follows people, not badges. If Horner returns with ownership influence, it is naive to think Enstone would remain isolated from Milton Keynes. Engineers, strategists, and senior figures who trust Horner's leadership would suddenly see Alpine as a viable and perhaps a safer long-term project. A slow but steady technical migration would be almost inevitable. And politically, this is where things get truly explosive. Ownership means Horner would once again have a seat at the most powerful tables in Formula One. Strategy group discussions, regulatory negotiations, future governance debates. This would not just be a sporting comeback, it would be a restoration of influence. Horner would once again be shaping the rules of the game, not merely reacting to them. For rival teams, this is deeply uncomfortable, because Alpine with Horner is no longer just a midfield competitor. It becomes a long-term project with intent, not necessarily a race-winning force overnight, but an organisation that suddenly knows exactly who it is, what it wants, and how to get there. This is why the paddock is nervous. Because Christian Horner's return through ownership is not about revenge, redemption, or nostalgia. It is about control, about proving that his legacy was never tied to one team, one designer, or one era. If this deal goes through, Formula One won't just be welcoming back a familiar face. It will be welcoming back a power broker who has learned from his fall and who may be more dangerous than ever. So here's the real question. If Christian Horner secures his stake and Alpine hands him operational influence, are we witnessing the birth of Formula One's next long-term power project? Or is this the most dangerous gamble of Horner's career? Let me know what do you think's in the comment below.